Hey, folks, welcome to Bouncing Brains. I'm Sean Hatfield.
And I'm Freddy G. And this afternoon, it is afternoon.
They don't need to know what time of day it is.
We have a special guest, Mike Medina. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. It's a busy-ass day, but I'm hanging in there.
Awesome. And I reached out to Mike. We met at a doctor's office. We were being checked routinely.
We met at a bar, and then we re-met at a doctor's office.
Yeah. And that has no correlation as to why
I'll
we
be
met
honest, that makes the story sound way more interesting and fucked up at the same time.
I know, right? Yeah, we met at a bar, and then we went to get checked together. It was part of, try to take care of my hookups.
Yeah, pretty much.
Got the same phone call from the same girl saying, "Hey, you might want to go get." Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure.
We had the same age, so I was like, you know what, bro? Let's go down to the clinic together.
Yeah, man. So before, because I do wanted to for you to introduce yourself and formally give information about yourself and your background. But I do want to say before we get into that, I reached out to Mike and wanted to bring him on because as far as I figured out, and I know you were kind of like the you're on the entrepreneurial side of this whole thing and everything that basically we're doing now. So that's why I felt the need to reach out, because you don't run into a lot of people like you or like us for that matter down here in the valley. So I felt that that's why I wanted to bring you on and everything, to kind of broaden the spectrum on that, as far as what you do. So with that being said, would you mind giving the people kind of a background on what you do and shit like that?
Yeah, sure. It's pretty complicated. I have my fingers in a lot of pies. I have my photo studio, Photos by Michelangelo. Just slap a .com on there and you can see what we're all about. We recently made the transition to starting the short film initiative. So anybody that has a script can pitch it to us, and we're trying to direct 12 short films this year. So we're photography, film studio. I also have a couple of other side ventures. I work with Bivisa Digital as their media creation specialist. Their art director, I think, is my title. I work with Ranvu, a food delivery company. A big plug. They're honestly the best food delivery company in the valley. Like if you look them up, just go to ranvu.com. They have a lot to offer. And
thank you for stating all these sources so that people don't fucking think that these are just shits that just came out like pimples out of nowhere. And
no, I mean. No, yeah, they're all really like legitimate businesses. I work with a chatbot developer to move his services. Basically what I do is I find people that have good products but need help marketing it, and then I use my like photo and video talents to help them make those products more marketable. That's the entrepreneurial side of what I do. But my main business is Photos by Michelangelo.
Gotcha. That's your main bread and butter.
Yes, sir. That's what puts food on the table.
And just basically, kind of give us the short version or whatever of like how you got into all of this. How did you wake up one day and you're like, hey, I'm doing this shit now?
Let's see. Well, I worked as a salesman most of my life. I worked as a salesman for like Office Depot, for The Monitor, for this magazine, just like all over the place. I've always been a salesman. I grew up with my father, who was a salesman too, so I kind of learned a lot from him. And it was kind of a natural fit for me to end up in like a marketing environment. So when you mix like my marketing and sales based upbringing with my passion for photography, it just kind of clicked on its own.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Awesome. And cause you run a podcast, right?
Yes. So we have 5 episodes recorded, but we still haven't posted any of them. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to make sure that there's momentum, that my co-host is still comfortable with this. I know now he's having some doubts about whether he's still going to be my like permanent co-host. And I want to make sure that once I start rolling, there's no reason to ever stop rolling. Like that we always have content coming out. So I, sometimes to my own detriment, I'm very precise with how I manage my projects. And if it's not running smoothly, I'd rather just not start it. So we're still, I would say, like beta testing.
Yeah.
But we have 5 episodes ready to post. And that's the Palm City Radio.
Palm City Radio. Okay. Mm-hmm. And how did you? Because that's kind of what I wanted to. Most of what I wanted to get into, because I also do have the understanding that you're trying to do that with your own podcast, and you're also trying to build a network per se of like the whole podcast to kind of shed the light on the podcasting industry, if you want to put it that way, down here in the valley. So how did you come about that, and what made you want to pursue towards that end goal?
Well, I mean, what made me want to pursue it is just the fact that when I see a good business idea and someone else isn't doing it, I say, well, I should probably do this, right? So I'll usually start a project, get it going, and then once it's on autopilot, I can put the right people in charge, have it kind of run itself, and it's passive revenue generation. Pretty straightforward. But what actually ended up happening is I already had my podcast ready. I already had an idea of like what I wanted to do with my podcast. I was thinking of starting 1 or 2 extra podcasts, like helping my friends start their podcasts and just building a little like podcast community. And then in my head, I said, well, if we have 2 to 3 podcasts in the same little group, it'd be very easy for me to approach. Probably shouldn't name drop them, but I have a couple of advertisers that had already expressed interest in advertising. So I thought it'd be very easy for me to just approach them and get them to sponsor our podcasts. And then I met this guy, Roberto Ordaz. If I'm not mistaken, he graduated from Berkeley, but I might be butchering that, in like audio production or some field related to podcasting. And what he does is he finds national advertisers and connects them to podcasts based on interests. So like, for example, he's not going to connect like a quilting company to the Joe Rogan podcast, right? Like he's going to find people that connect to a podcast. He's going to help match like CBD oils to Joe Rogan because that's what that guy's all about. So he finds advertisers and pairs them at the national level to podcasts that he finds that are a good fit for those advertisers. So I told him, hey, like, why don't we start our own network here in the Valley? So in addition to what you're doing at the national level, you can also be making your revenue here at the local level. So we teamed up, and right now we're trying to get 7 podcasts started. That's our first goal. So we're approaching people that think they have a good podcast idea, having a couple of conversations with them, making sure that the idea sounds like it would be sustainable long-term and that they seem like they have the drive to keep something going and not just drop off the map. And if everything looks good, then we're going to help them set up their podcast. We would be providing recording at our studio. We'd be providing mastering, posting, ID3 tagging, RSS feeds, all that stuff.
Gotcha. And that was kind of what was going to lead me to my next question of, because I know that you've kind of formally, informally, kind of type of thing, reached out to us about our podcast, and I was just curious in a more elaborate, if I should say that, kind of the idea of like what pushed you to kind of reach out to us and wanting to bring us on board with the idea that you had.
Right. So when I started meeting with Roberto, with again my partner, that he does more of the connecting advertisers to podcast kind of thing, and I'm doing more of like the audio production side.
Yeah.
Well, we had identified 7 key markets that are discrete enough that they can be differentiated between each other at the Valley level. So we saw that there's that like board gamer demographic. Obviously, like anybody can start like a D&D type podcast. And if I can get somebody to start that, we can target like board gamers. And that comes with its own set of like, if you're into board games, you're probably into like Game of Thrones and Star Wars. And that's like the nerd demographic. I don't say that as an insult. I'm a nerd too, right? And then the nightlife scene connects pretty well to stand-up comedy. So instead of trying to find a local comedian and trying to help them start a podcast, it'd be a lot easier to just find a comedian that already has a podcast. And I happen to know the RGV's funniest comedian from 2018, so that was a pretty natural fit.
Thank you, man. Thank you for the plug, but no pressure.
That was a smooth stroke of the ego right there.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Go ahead and turn off the camera. I'm going to finish off Freddy on.
Yeah, I was about to say I was borderline about to nut, but yeah, not there yet.
Let me not sit directly in front of you, then, bro. Yeah, let me scoot over. Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Pornhub for a little bit there, I think they may have scaled back on that ambition, but for a while there, they were trying to court some podcasters to jump onto the platform and use use Pornhub as their platform of distribution.
That's sick. Yeah, I've been I'm aware that Pornhub has been doing a lot of porn related ventures, and I find that so fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I would say fuck it. Yeah, put your podcast on Pornhub. Why not? That's hilarious.
Yeah. Kind of going back to what you were saying right now, because I'm really interested in the concept that you're kind of bringing towards like the podcasting industry and like the whole idea. But in your very young venture that you're trying to tackle on and everything, what are some of the kinks, for lack of a better word, that you've already run into with what you're trying to do, and how are you trying to counteract that?
There's one very prominent kink, and there's no good solution to it. There's a lot of people in the Valley that do have good podcast ideas. I don't want to name drop this one person, but there's one client who has a platform that's already got some great reach. They're getting like 1,500 plus views on everything they do, on every single episode they put out. And their only means of distribution is Facebook Live. I think that's crazy that you have a podcast. I think I told you about them. Yeah, let's not name drop them.
Yeah,
but Facebook Live is their only means of distribution. So if I could come in, set up some microphones, tell them, put down the phone, like, we're going to set you up properly, get you on iTunes, get you on Spotify. They've proven that they have a product that people want to listen to. So I would like to come in and do that work. But since I have other projects and my main business, Photos by Michelangelo, keeps me very busy, I don't have the time to do it myself, which means I have to pay somebody to go set up the microphones and record and master and all that stuff. So if I take it on myself, I'm overworking myself.
Yeah.
If I hire somebody else, well, I need to pay that person.
Yeah.
So my solution is I want to pay that person, but I would like to charge the people that are getting their podcast produced. Now the problem is nobody wants to pay more than like $5 to get their podcast produced. So even when I'm coming in and saying, you're getting this amazing quality, we're going to get you on iTunes, we're going to get you on Spotify, we're going to get you like nationally syndicated, your RSS feed, proper ID3 tagging, everything. A lot of people are like, oh, how much? And it's so cheap, man. I don't want to drop the number on air, but it's very affordable what we've been offering people. It's what we offered you.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like, people don't want to invest in it because you don't really know if you're going to get your money back. It's kind of
and I wanna also like kind of tackle that like from the other side of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you don't want to invest. It's kind of like a lot of content creators, and I will include myself in the bunch. Like, it's not that you want to invest. It's sometimes you're stricken to, like, you don't have the money to do it, right? And I know and it's kind of where I battle with myself, because I know that if I were to invest money into this, I know I'm like almost positive that I would see the return. My biggest problem is that I feel that the return is not quick enough. And if I were to do that now, it's kind of going to set me back financially into a hole that I'm trying to get out of and not go deeper into. So that's what I kind of like struggle with. But I feel, and again, on this, I'll speak for myself. I feel that if I did have the extra money to do so, I definitely would. So I think what a lot of us creators struggle with is like, not that the return is not going to be there, but the return takes a while to come back. And also we don't have the financial backing to where like I can kind of lay back on this cushion while this comes back around like full circle.
Yeah, no, that's the biggest problem with investments is you have to wait for them to mature. And
then it kind of sucks where like you only have this one source of income that has nothing to do with like the source of income from the stuff that you're creating. So this one source of income like has to supplement for everything that you're having. And when that's like I said, I'm not ashamed to say it. Like when that's not enough to like supplement everything for you, like that's where the difficult part comes into play.
Yeah, no, I totally feel that. There's no like, I'm not upset about it. I'm not like, oh, why won't they drop the money? Like at like people in general, it's like I get it because I've been there too. Like when I started my photo business, man, photography is so like cost prohibitive. if you want to take better photos, well, you need to go from a crop sensor to a full frame body. You cannot buy a full frame body for under $1,000. Congratulations, you bought your full frame body. Oh, but you're still using these like $200 lenses. They're not sharp enough. You need to buy, at the very least, a good like $700 lens. And it's gotten to the point where I'm using like at least $20,000 of equipment just to get marginally better results than what I would have gotten before. But those marginally better results are what set you apart in the industry. Yeah, because at the end, like, this is getting super technical, but if you're rocking like a 5D Mark IV and a 135 f2, you're going to get that really nice blurry background people like, and you're going to get the really sharp person in focus. If I had shot that same photo with a much lower tier camera, let's say like a Canon T3i with a 50mm 1.8, you could still get the blurry background and you could still get the person sharp and in focus. It wouldn't be as blurry a background and it wouldn't be as sharp focus, but we're talking about a $5,000 setup versus a $500 setup. $4,500 of difference just to get a marginally sharper photo with a slightly blurrier background. That's insane. But that little bonus, that little difference, that I would say like a 15-20% difference in quality, is what makes people look at your photos and be like, oh, this guy's a professional. Of course, a lot of that's also like, you need to know how to frame correctly, you need to know how to edit well, you need to be professional, know how to book clients, have the talent to begin with. I'm not like saying that that's not important. I'm just saying a big part of this equation is spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know when I was starting this business, I was spending, like, anytime I made money, I'd immediately spend it on more lenses. And I was like 20 when I was doing this, and my dad would be like, why don't you get serious about your life and like go get a real job? And I'd be like, hang on, let me just buy this one lens real quick. And he'd see me buying like $1,000 lenses while driving the same beat up car I'd had for years. And my dad would be like, aren't you ashamed to drive that car? I'd be like, nah, look at this lens, dude. He thought I was crazy, but now I'm like, now I'm doing pretty well. And I love rubbing it in his face.
I gotta imagine there's a little bit of aggravation as well, seeing some of the stuff they're doing with like the say the dual camera like Samsung phones, where it's like, oh, we can do all the, like, instead of having to set the shot, you can just go, no, just take the image and fuck with it afterwards. You can,
change the background. So
yeah.
That's a really good question, man. I love, because I get that question a lot, right? Like, the new iPhone can blur out the background. So doesn't that make your camera obsolete? Well, no, really. Because as a photographer, you have to find creative ways to fight back against the industry. So I know like 10 years ago, if your camera could make the background blurry, you looked professional because other cameras couldn't do that. Now that cell phone cameras can do that, I have to take a proactive step forward before I get phased out by the industry. Like now, in this economy, a blurry background is not enough. So I'm also using strobe lighting, and I'm using creative lighting techniques, and I'm working harder to find better locations to shoot in. And I'm telling my clients I don't want to shoot in empty fields anymore. We're paying for these expensive locations. I'm taking them to Casa Polonia. I'm taking them to Quinta Mazatlan. I'm taking them to the Salt Flats. I'm taking them to like expensive or exotic locations, because that makes more of a difference. And that's also part of a growth as a photographer, is learning that like, you need to invest in your equipment, sure. You need to invest in your talent, sure. But you also need to invest in like where you shoot, who you shoot with. It's a complicated equation. So yeah, I don't think cell phones will ever be a serious threat to photography, because a cell phone doesn't give you lighting, a cell phone doesn't give you studio space, a cell phone doesn't give you all the other things that people pay for, printing.
And I agree as well, man. Like, I don't have extensive knowledge on photography, because it's not my field. But I've always had that argument. I feel that no matter how much or how expensive a cell phone can get, and no matter how good of a camera it can have, like, it's never gonna be better than a professional shooting actual camera. That's just the same thing with like the filming. I've heard people brag about like that there's full blown commercials that were shot in like an iPhone. You know?
Oh, those ads are all over Times Square. I hate it. It's a giant banner that says "shot on iPhone."
Yeah, but which is fine. But we go back to the same thing of like, when you don't have the budget, you can probably get away with it. But this ad or this commercial or this movie, because I've also heard of movies being shot on like an iPhone or whatever.
Yeah, Tangerine was shot on an iPhone like 5S or something like that, and it won like a bunch of film awards.
Yeah, but to me, that's still not gonna like make like it's not gonna make a camcorder or like an actual professional grade camera, make it go away or make it better. Now, I also, on the flip side of it, I also do think that there is cameras that are very unnecessary. Like, you don't need to go buy a $10,000 camera. Like, I've heard that there's $5,000 microphone. And to me, like, I feel you don't need to spend $5,000 on a fucking mic to, like, make you great. Sounding. A lot of that falls back on what you're saying, your production, your director, like the person using the actual equipment. Like, yeah. I feel that you can get yourself $100 mic, a $200 mic, and it's a great sounding piece of equipment. We were actually just talking about this.
Well, to reiterate something I've said on this podcast before, these are $50 AKGs. I mean, this was not bottom of the barrel. I mean, I bought a couple mics and went like, which one of these makes my voice sound better? And then returned the one that didn't. Two examples, actually, as far as the cell phones go. There was a story I remember listening to probably back in 2012 or something where a comic had gone out and paid like $10,000 to have a special recorded. And the guys he had recording the special didn't get the full coverage, didn't bother to get the sound on it. So he basically blew $10,000 on something that turned out to be shit. It was not up to his expectations, but yeah, right. So, and this is one of those things where you go, oh shit, that's genius. He basically went in, bought 10, iPhone 4s or whatever the fuck it was at the time, and got himself a crew, and basically, was talking with the DP and got it exactly what he wanted. They recorded the whole thing. And then he spent 4 hours the next day going in and returning these fucking iPhones. So essentially shot it for a couple of $100 just for, paying his crew and all this shit, and got exactly what he wanted. And that kind of goes to what you were saying. I think more often now that some of this stuff is available, you get these people that are geeking out over the possibility of the technology without actually having any sort of creative vision as to what they want to do.
Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of those examples that we gave earlier are fascinating because they're also misleading. I know those like shot on iPhone ads in Times Square. Those are either like several shots stitched together, or they're like high dynamic range by compositing several photos. So they'll do things that only advanced photographers know how to do, and then trick you into thinking that you're going to be able to pull that off. The reality is, I don't think anybody could just pick up a phone, shoot different exposure shots and stack them unless you know exactly what you're doing. And Tangerine, that short film that was shot on iPhone, it was also shot with this unique lens mount that let him put lenses on the phone. It had a microphone, it had a full rig. So that, like, it's all smoke and mirrors, man. What I see, because I geek out a lot too on technology, and what I've seen across microphones, cameras, even cars, right? We see this trend of like, there's the crap that is just like super low budget and you shouldn't buy. Then there's this stuff that's budget, but it's budget where it's like it's balanced. Like it's affordable, but you get the right quality for the price. Then there's usually like the industry standard. So like in microphones, it sounds like the AKG might be like budget, but like good for what you need and like balanced. And I know that everybody's always getting moist over those like $150 Shure microphones, the like live performance ones.
Oh, I've got a Yeti Blue at home that I don't fucking use. Blue really? Yeti or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, and oftentimes those are significantly more expensive, but you're not really getting that much of a difference in quality. And then when you break free from that cluster of pricing, you get into like the premium models. Usually those are for like very specific applications. So for example, like me and this other videographer I work with, we're looking at buying $1,000 microphone for video production. But what makes it unique is that it's extremely sound isolating. You can put it on a boom mic over a person. And when you're recording a movie, like if I'm following you with a boom mic, I can pick up your audio and literally nothing else. Just your voice and maybe a little of your footsteps for like sound, like for soundscape, like for texture.
Yeah.
But usually things that are overpriced are only for like special applications. So I think a good place to live in is to float between best value and industry standard. Don't ever go below best value. Don't ever go above industry standard. There's a reason the industry favors. I mean, if Kanye is singing into a $150 Shure mic, like, it's good enough for Kanye. I think it's good enough for us, right? We don't need to go beyond that either.
I think that's also the flip side of people kind of going like, I've got the best equipment. I know more than a few people who are highly creative individuals who should be putting out content, and they're constantly tripping themselves up. It's like, well, I don't have the quality that I need. It's like, no, just go. If you have equipment, go shoot with that equipment. I mean, by all means, if you, I mean, at least that way you find out if you're crap or not.
Right. Yeah.
Or if you're really good. I mean, somebody's going to, I mean, great example I can think of would be that black and white special that Bill Burr shot.
Oh, yeah.
Back, what, 2013, 2014?
2012, 13,
yeah, it looks like it's something shot from like the late 90s or something, but it's well done. The angles are right. The sound is good. It's all the elements are there. It's just not. I was checking out some video podcasts on YouTube the other day, and it's 4K 60 frames, and it looks like shit.
For a video podcast, that's insane. Yeah. That's really funny, man. Well, I was actually just talking to Sarah from Bavisa, the marketing company that I work with, and she was telling me that people are, because she does a lot of analytics. Like, she doesn't just have opinions; she researches and she pulls data online, and she'll tell me like factually these are the trends. Right now, there's a very big trend to emulate the '90s in terms of video production. So a lot of people are requesting that lo-fi commercial look, and as somebody who just invested over 10 grand into like video production equipment, to then be told, can you make it look like it was shot on $100 camcorder from the 90s is hilarious. Because I was just researching that. If you look up the Crossfire commercial on YouTube, do you guys remember that Crossfire board game?
Yes.
You do? Yeah.
Yes.
It's like that super lo-fi. It's like the future of gaming. And they have this like cheesy like 80s audio track, and it's like Crossfire. It's like super cheesy, man. But it's all like lo-fi, and it's got those like TV scan lines.
Have you seen the? I know it was a trend for a while where they were taking like modern shows, like they did like was it Game of Thrones, like as a 90s.
I saw that. That is so good.
And I don't think a lot of people appreciate how much effort has to go into taking that video and then like
making it look.
Yes.
And that's what I was going to mention, right? Is like, if I shot the commercial these clients are requesting on a $100 camcorder from the 90s, I'd be done. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm using this $10,000 video equipment and then buying a bunch of plugins and After Effects and Premiere presets that are like legitimate 90s emulations. We took a VCR scan lines and reproduced them digitally so that you can overlay them onto your video production. Only $149 for this overlay. So you're having to invest thousands of dollars to make something look like shit because it's what people want. That's fascinating.
It's like a giant polished piece of shit. Basically.
There's so much polish, yeah. Or a really good example in the audio world is how a lot of musicians are using like 60s soundboards, 60s microphones. They're using tube amps, like they're using all that old equipment from the 60s so they can get that texture, because it's easier to just use the old equipment than to try to like over modulate your sound and make it sound like it. You're like trying to distort it sufficiently. Like, why distort it when you can just go buy that old equipment? As a result of that, those like 60s tube amps are like over $1,000 now. I have a friend that's like, check out this microphone. I got it for $800, and it's this like rusty piece of shit, but it's like John Lennon used to like this kind of microphone.
Yeah.
All right, dude. Shit's crazy to me, but you get that sound, and that's what you want.
He also liked heroin and beating his wife, but fuck.
Heroin not included.
You're not talking to the right microphone distributor.
That's the $5,000 microphones you're talking about, man. They just come with a little bag of heroin.
I unscrewed the top. And, well, let me ask this. You're talking about some of the specialty equipment. I imagine, aside from some of the very specific specialty equipment, there is at least a little bit of transient value in this stuff where it's as far as like, well, I bought it to do this, my passion project, but I can also take it and go shoot a commercial. I can, if somebody wants to hire me to shoot a movie, I can do that. I can get all of these. There is a transient value to it, and that it's not. We were talking earlier about the spending money on hosting or making sure that all of your studio space is good. We were talking earlier about these people going out and spending. There's a podcast group on Facebook where it's basically a bunch of people who are amateur to semi-amateurs that are going on there and kind of going, "Are you doing this? Because I'm doing this. What are your results?" And you see these people spending absorbent amount of money on these microphones, and then going, "Shit, this room is entirely too echoey," and then having to go and spend the money on
sound panels,
the battens, and all this stuff. And there's not a lot of there is no transient value in that. It's like if you don't, you might be able to take that microphone and use it in another setting, but for the most part, some of these high end studio microphones, you can't take these out in the field. They have to be mounted and kind of treated with kid gloves, otherwise they devalue very quickly.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that, man. That's a really good point. I did just make a lot of purchases in podcast equipment so I could make sure that we had good quality, and they're sitting in a bag, man. And if I'm not recording a podcast, they're just sitting there. The recorder itself.
What's this again?
The podcast
that's sitting in a bag.
Oh, all the microphones, all the cables that I bought. I bought like high quality shielded XLR.
What? Just real quick, what microphones did you buy?
I bought the Shure. They were like $100 each on Amazon. That should tell you which ones they are. They're like the Shure Live Performance standard microphone. It's like every fucking open mic, every bar, every live show has these.
They're dynamics, right?
Yeah. They're they're dynamic.
And you said you haven't used them?
I've used them, but I would have talking about transient value. When I bought that video camera, I can use it for short films. I can use it for passion projects. When I bought my photo camera, that same photo camera that I make my money off of is what I travel with, and it's what I take photos of my dogs with, and I send out the best dick pictures, man. Just kidding. I got that photo camera does a lot for me. It doesn't just do work. My video camera doesn't just do work. My studio space doesn't just do work for me. That office that I have is also great for hosting board game nights. We had a really chill little Halloween get together there. I get a lot of value out of everything else that I invest in. But yeah, microphones, you're right. If you're not using it for a podcast, because the type of microphones you need for a podcast are very specific kind, they don't have a lot of other applications. My sound recorder I can still use for production work because I bought a Zoom, so it's portable. But
those Zoom recorders are people don't understand, or maybe just we understand because we do this shit, but people don't understand how valuable that what we're recording on now, dude. That what you have is the shit. I've been wanting to get one just because of the fact that I have other ideas that I want to do as far as recording, with myself and shit. But I'll be honest, I can't afford it. So I can't afford it at the moment. But that little recorder that you have, and the fact that it has the dual mics, those dual mics on the it's awesome.
Which recorder is it?
It's
the Zoom
H4.
Yeah. Oh, the H4. So I have the H5, basically the same thing. How many XLR outputs do you have?
Just two. But it's also got the the two built-in directional mics as well as the bit in the back. That's what we're plugged into right now. We got a soundboard plugged into the mic
I see.
input.
You have it remoted out. Oh, yeah. Okay. I get you.
So what I want to point out with that shit is the fact that you could literally go anywhere and set up shop anywhere, and you can. As long as they let you and you don't get kicked out, you can hit record. You got that memory card that it fits up to how big?
Well, it's however big you want to, however much money you want to spend on the SD card.
Yeah.
That's actually not true, and I'm going to teach you a lesson that hopefully you don't have to learn the hard way like I did. We were at a quinceañera on Saturday, and our Zoom recorder, the H5, kept saying invalid memory card won't work. Halfway through an interview, it just started glitching out on us. Frustrating. We were recording on a 128 gigabyte card. Found out Zoom has a limit of 32, and then on the H6, 64. But you can't go beyond that size on the memory card, or you can potentially have issues. Yeah.
Okay.
Super annoying. I don't know what size card you have, but
I think it's a 16 gig, maybe.
Yeah, you'll be fine with that. But apparently their file architecture doesn't. So don't just go for a 128 and be like, I don't have to worry about this ever again. Like, nah. That was so
okay. So 64. So 64 is basically the cap out.
For yours it's 32, and for mine it's 32. The H6 goes up to 64, but the H4 and the H5.
So 32 is. Oh shit!
I'll be honest. I got the H4 because I was originally I mentioned to you before I do my own solo podcast, and that was just intended to be like a one-on-one thing. So I was like, oh, 2 XLR out, inputs. I'm fucking.
Can you hold it up again? Can I see it real quick? Does it have the swappable capsule on the top?
No, these are the fixed ones. It does have their adjustable, so you can get the 180 or 90 degree focus on the sound. But yeah, it's not the.
Gotcha. I know on the H5 you can pop off the capsule and pop on one that gives you 2 more XLRs.
If I could rewind the clock on it, I would definitely spend the extra 150 on the H6.
An extra $40, man. Oh, maybe
H6.
Oh, on the H6.
Yeah, you got the 4 XLR inputs and the swappable capsule and all that stuff. Well, hey, man.
That happens. Yeah, I bought the H5 because I like the portability, but I hated that it only had 2 inputs. But in my head, I was like, well, I'll work with it. And then right before I pulled the trigger, I found that capsule that gives you 2 extra XLRs instead of the stereo. And I was like, well, if I have 4, I don't see myself ever needing more than that. So that was, for me, that was like, again, like I had said, that was a good mix of budget, value. It's what I need. The H6 would be a little bit better, but you got to know your limits, right?
Well, we were having this conversation with Christopher Torres when we had him in here. This setup I got running on this thing right now, minus the laptop to make sure that we got the video, so y'all can see our pretty faces. That soundboard I got over there runs off of, it's plugged in right now, but I can run it for maybe 3.5 hours off of 3 9-volt batteries. So that, along with the Zoom, it's literally a field recorder where I have 7 mics inputted, as well as, plug another one into the back and get all kinds of ambient stuff going as well.
I gotta get the information for that soundboard off you, man.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
It's not bad either, man. I think I paid $70 for it.
And that's something that I did want to point out, kind of again, because I stick on the lower budget type of shit. Because I've heard so many people around me say, like, I want to do a podcast, I want to record something, but I just don't have the budget for it or whatever. And I just focus on the Zoom, because I've worked with that. Not me personally, like I've worked around it to where somebody else was setting it up and shit like that. But I'm saying, like, with that Zoom and excluding the actual board, I mean, if you have the couple $100 to like buy yourself a board, like awesome. Like that's
just to reiterate, $79 I want to say is what I paid for that board.
Yeah,
I think I know which one it is too. I've seen it on Amazon a couple times. I did not know that I could run my Zoom through that board. Yeah. So you get like full modulation. You can like drop people like.
Yeah, I mean it's not. You're getting essentially a mono feed from the board to the Zoom, because it's using an aux cable just to plug straight from the board into the recorder. But
so it's not multi-tracked. It's one track with all the.
No. Yeah. Again, this goes back to me kicking myself for not putting the money down on the H6, but again, had no idea we would be doing this project.
No, but I mean, this works in its own way, and I'm sure editing one track is a lot easier than having these 4 different tracks and having to potentially sync them up if you mess something up. Yeah, I can see that. That's cool, man. Good to know.
And there's so much. We were talking about the idea of meeting that at least standard of quality and budget. That middle ground in between. And there is so much more available at this point. Like I remember, maybe in the early 2000s, I had a bunch of friends that were into sound production and a little bit of video. And yeah, dropping $1,000 on, a piece of equipment was obviously ridiculous on the price point, but almost necessary to get anything close to what was considered a professional or, a sellable, a marketable product.
Yeah, that was like, if you're not dropping insane amounts of money, you can't penetrate the industry. And it goes perfectly back into what we were talking about earlier. Like with that Canon T3i and a 50mm lens, you can get that whole package for $500. You can start selling portraits. You can start doing little family sessions. A lot of people do newborn sessions. I won't name drop them, but there's a photo studio that I used to work for. They didn't use top of the line equipment. I'm kind of name dropping them because I'm going to tell you it's the most successful photo studio in the Valley as far as I know. They make so much money. Everybody loves them and respects them. Like I'm going to name drop them. It's Dolce Photography, dude. Everybody fucking loves them. They take the best baby pictures in the Valley. They invested all their money into like studio space and lighting and the experience. When you walk in, they offer you coffee, they offer you chocolates, they pamper you. It makes you feel like you're a VIP. But the cameras are just like basic cameras, basic lenses. Yeah, you can supplement not having this one thing maxed out if you give a more well-rounded experience. And a lot of people forget that and they'll drop, kind of like what I did. I dropped a lot of money on this big production camera and then I was like, wait, how much are the batteries? Wait, how much are the memory cards? Oh, so if I want to stabilize it, that's a $2,000 gimbal. Oh, okay. All right, cool. And now I'm just like fighting this uphill battle with that camera where I keep buying more equipment for it just to, yeah.
So now that we've kind of gone into like the whole technical aspect of it, I was glad that we were able to shed light on that. With your personal experience and again, some of the stuff that you've dealt with as far as like the podcast, the production and everything, can you elaborate a bit more on like the whole marketing side of like the podcast and how is it that people may or may not see like profits from it or what have you? Because we're actually kind of tugging and pulling with this issue as well. Right. And what are some of the things that people can begin to do to kind of head in that direction?
So the reason a lot of podcasters don't know how to make money off of their product is the same reason a lot of photographers, a lot of videographers, you see this even more with painting, right? Artists, artistically minded people tend to be very good at the process, at creating a valuable product, at being, maybe your art is entertainment like with you, maybe your art is painting, maybe your art is photography like me. But if you're an artist, you might not be as business minded as somebody who's focused on business, and getting advertiser dollars is a lot more about being like business minded and like knowing how to advertise yourself and knowing like what channels to go through. There's a lot of that stuff I wasn't aware of either until I spoke to Roberto. So I'm not as business minded as you would think, which is weird for me to say as an entrepreneur, but I'm just very good at finding people that know how to do this. Yeah, that's my technique, right? Is like, all right, well, I know this has to get done, but like, fuck me, that's a lot of work. And then I'll meet the right person. I'll be like, all right, I could use your talents here. You can make this much. Are you down? And we can just kind of work that out. So I think as content creators, you need to acknowledge what your strengths and your weaknesses are. And if you know that you're not going to be great at marketing your product, but you're creating a very entertaining product, then find somebody that can market it for you. On the other hand, if you think that you could market this product amazingly, like, oh man, if I had a podcast, I have so many avenues I could like produce it through. Like, I know that I could get advertiser dollars, but I'm actually not great at entertaining. Then you can find creative people to help you out to make the product interesting. And
that's where I believe that the like for us comics or for anybody actually doing like with film and everything. And that's where I believe that the aspect of the creative and like the writer's room per se comes into play, because we played around with this idea where we also do think that it would be a great idea to also have a creative writer's room or writer's session per se, because I believe that anything that has that kind of structure, there's no other way to put it, like it makes it for better content. You know what I mean? So going back to the idea that you were saying, to where maybe if you're a good marketer or if you're good with the technical side, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're good with the creative content side of it. Now, just because you have that piece missing, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't create a podcast, that you shouldn't try to create or direct a movie or write a movie or whatever. It just means that you should get in contact with the people that do, because it doesn't mean that you're, just because that's your dream, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue it or what have you. And I like the way that you kind of put that in that light, to where you can get in contact with the right people and pursue that. But it's just like, speaking from personal experience and what we've experienced, it's kind of difficult when you feel like that you've hit a wall, as far as, again, the marketing the product correctly, so that you can get that and reach that end goal. Like, I feel, and maybe I'll speak for myself as well, but I feel that we've kind of at times like hit that wall, and I feel that I'm only still here because this is what I love to do. I feel that if I didn't love to do this, or I didn't have love for it, and I mean, as far as the comedy as well, like comedy and the podcasting, I have genuine love for it, and that's why I'm still here. But I think that the end goal is still, like, we would like to see some monetary return, for it as well, and that's our daily, week in, week out type of thing that we pull on each other for as well. So that's why I was asking you, as far as somebody, and this is kind of the way I wanted you to kind of bring this all the way back around, and because I know that we also got to get you out of here soon, but I wanted you to, like, kind of come back around, and if you had to advise somebody, which is basically is what you do, somebody that wants to start a podcast but has no experience as far as technical, as far as even the creative, like you said yourself, somebody that's like, I want to start a podcast, but I don't know what to talk about. So everything, like, from the creative perspective to the technical and to the marketing side of it, how would you break it down to them, and what would you advise?
I would say you should look at how businesses look at how startups are structured. Look at the general flow chart for a startup business and apply that to your creative project. So step one is always going to be market analysis, research and development. So in podcasting terms, just go listen to some other fucking podcasts, man. Go I want to do offensive comedy. All right, then go listen to like Mean Boys. Go listen to Cometown. Go listen to Joe Rogan. Oh, I want to do business-minded podcasts. All right, we'll go listen to Tim Ferriss. Oh, I want like a commercial podcast that is easily, okay, yeah, go listen to Mark Maron. Like, you can go find podcasters for any avenue. If you want to start a like serial crime podcast, there's a lot of those. You can listen to those, become a fan of those, get your inspiration, and then figure out how you can do it differently. Once you have your product figured out, once you have your product all figured out, which is all the research and development that I'm talking about, then you need to start looking at production. So now that I know what I want to make, I need to make it. So you start looking at what kind of financial means do I have? What is my budget for purchasing this equipment? And then you purchase the right equipment, start producing some content. Once you have a couple of episodes recorded, you say, all right, I had an idea. After listening to all these podcasts, I had an idea. And then I went and I bought the equipment to record that idea. Now that I have these episodes, I just need to get them out there. So you go into distribution, and there's a lot of articles online on how to launch your podcast. And they all tell you more or less the same thing. You just need to get your RSS feed set up, get your episodes uploaded, take the time to ID3 tag. ID3 tags are like hashtags for audio content, basically, that tell people what's in that content. So you get all that done. And I say that for the listeners, obviously, you guys know. Yeah. And then once you get that done, well, again, you had the idea, you purchased the equipment, and you created that product. So you took your idea, made it a product, and now you have put the product up for distribution. Now that it's on the market, you just need to start making sure that people are aware of it. That's when you get into marketing. Once you're done with marketing, once you've like gotten your organic reach, a little bit of paid reach, made sure that you're connecting with the right people and putting it on the right avenues, then you can talk to advertisers and see, all right, look at this product that I came up with, created, posted online, distributed, and marketed successfully. Look at my reach. do you want to be a part of this? Would you like for me to say your name out loud on this product? And they're going to say yes.
Just to kind of backtrack a little bit, as far as going back to what you're saying about the marketing, aside from figuring out your audience, how would you necessarily go about marketing the actual product of the podcast itself, like actually marketing it, other than what we've been doing, like for example, pushing it out on social media? And basically I've even fucking told people on the street, like when I strike up a conversation or whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't push it on people like fucking like religion and shit, but I'm like, it'll come up and I'll be like, oh yeah, by the way, I also do have this podcast, and we kind of turn on the camera and kind of bullshit back and forth with me and another co-host.
But you should push it like a religion, because that's the reason religion grows, right? Is because it gets pushed like a religion. Like, you should go tell everybody you meet, podcast, listen to my podcast, and make sure that it's easily available for them to find everywhere. You absolutely should. I've said photos by Michelangelo with this one 6 times now on this episode. I want to make sure if anybody catches anything from this, is that they're going to go on my fucking website, photosbymichelangelo.com. That's how you make your business work, right? So that's your organic reach. As the art director for Bavisa Digital, BavisaDigital.com. That's the marketing company. If you're asking how to market your product, I would say decide how much you can figure out on your own. Decide how much you can learn on your own by doing online courses, by visiting these websites and reading these articles online, and then decide how much maybe you need to hire an ad agency for. And if you even have the budget for that, you might not even have, especially at the podcast level, most people probably aren't going to hire a marketing agency. Usually we're more tailored for like retail and like bigger businesses, right? But there's a lot of content online on how to successfully market your content. You mentioned that you're in a podcasting group. Make sure that you have a link to your podcast in your personal profile on Facebook, so that when you make any kind of comment or post, anybody that clicks on your profile, it's right there at the top. Oh, you know what? Let me check out his content. Make sure that any chance you get, when you say, oh yeah, when I'm working on my podcast, sometimes I have these issues. You say, when I'm working on my podcast, bouncingbrainspodcast.com, these are the issues that I have. Just name drop it all the time. I think I say my website like at least 100 times a week. But I try to make sure it's not annoying. I work it in organically. I'll turn it into a joke. So they're like, oh, he's not really shilling. He's just making a joke. But I said it, 7 times now? Like, that's how you do it, man.
And I'll be honest, I like the way that you've done, because I've caught it. I don't know why the fuck, because I have ADD and shit. But I caught that, And I just want to point out that it wasn't like in an annoying way, because I've seen annoying fucking like basically a shitty way of marketing shit, and it gets annoying. And believe me, if it was annoying, we would have probably already kicked you out and shit.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, like, and there's a way to do it. It's just like we've had that we've ran into that barrier a couple of times where it's kind of difficult. But I like the way that the way that you put it and the way that you've explained it. I know that it's helped me to kind of like broaden the spectrum on like the whole podcasting and like my comedy career and all of that. And that was one of the biggest reasons as into why I also wanted to get you in here. And something that I did want to say, and I'm just going to say it briefly on camera, because I wanted to keep you a little bit afterwards, after we shut the cameras off. But we are looking to kind of work together, to kind of work on this as a whole and everything. And I just felt, because I've also been approached in the whole podcasting, because I do know a couple of people that do want to start a podcast from scratch. I had 2 people come up to me with a specific idea, and I genuinely did think that it was a good idea for them to pursue and everything. So they came up to me. It's like, hey man, I see that you have your podcast. I watch it and I listen to it. So I was wondering, I have this idea, and he kind of pitched it to me, and I did. I think I thought that his approach was kind of weird, but the idea of his podcast, I think it was a good idea. He wants to go around town interviewing random people, basically.
Just like with a portable recorder.
Yeah, yeah.
That's yeah. We had talked about something similar with the Zoom. There's special equipment that he would have to buy for that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be terribly expensive.
Yeah, and that was his whole premise behind it, that he wanted to go around like literally interviewing random people just on like random shit. He's like, of course, before I hit record, I would tell them. I was like, look, this is what this is about. This is the approach I'm taking. Are you cool if I hit record and we just continue or whatever? And I was like, well, man, just as long as you don't get, punched in the face or kicked in the nuts, I mean, I think you'd be fine.
There's already a company that does something kind of like that, but not like this. His idea is different enough that he should definitely pursue it. And if he's listening, like, I encourage that, because I think the Valley needs
shout
more
out to
podcasting.
Leo, if you are watching or if you will watch this episode.
Yeah, shout out to Neil, man. I think podcasts are a very interesting way to preserve the spirit of our culture, like the zeitgeist that we're living in right now, because we have this, like, there's so many interesting there's so much like interesting stuff going on in the Valley, and if it weren't for podcasts like yours, people at the national level might not know what's going on down here. They might only know what the news is representing. For example, I think it was the Washington Post. They put out a photo series that said like the Rio Grande Valley, and they showed off like the Rio Grande Valley in a series of photos right after Trump's visit. Every single photo was taken in downtown McAllen.
Yeah. I saw that.
And it was like, dude,
I saw that shit.
Y'all, we have fucking Applebee's, we have Best Buy, like, you're making us look like a ranch, but like we don't just have it at the end of
the comment section on those posts was fucking hilarious.
Oh, I can only imagine. I wish I'd seen that.
Man.
That's so good. It's so infuriating. But with podcasts like yours, people can see, wait, hang on, there's like stand-up comedians and they're winning awards, so there's competitions. So thanks to you, people can find out about the stand-up comedy scene here in the Valley.
And see, when I initially came to Sean and pitched the idea of this, a lot of people don't know this, and I'm not saying I've lost the premise of what I wanted to do, but when I initially pitched the idea to Sean, my biggest purpose on this was that I wanted to create a platform with with local artists that the radio wasn't reaching out to, but not just with local artists. I did want that to be our circle around, like artists, musicians, comedians, entrepreneurs, small business owners. That was what I wanted to reach out to. But my biggest premise, my biggest thing was giving the light and shedding the light on people that did not have the light because they were too small to step into commercial radio, to step into commercial advertising because they were too small. You know what I'm saying?
And it's not a lack of they're interesting, they're just not big enough to be recognized.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was one of the biggest reasons as into why I wanted to start like this podcast. And I feel that we are getting there. My only thing was that at times, and we've had this conversation, I do feel that we're not moving fast enough for other reasons, right? But I do feel that we're on the right track, and that's why I've told Sean, I was like, that's why I like the fact that we're keeping our guest list very diverse and shit like that. And we were just talking about it as well, to where we wanted to, I wanted to reach out to different people like fucking nutritionists, doctors, because I have an idea for a whole different segment on health and mental health, to be exact. And but I wanted to reach out to people that have like a know-how of like that they actually know shit, because I actually wanted to bring on like credible people, because I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm not listening to podcasts for bullshit, I listen to kind of like get my education and get my like I was telling Sean, I haven't listened to commercial radio in fucking years, like podcasts and fucking news sites mobile news sites is where I've been getting like most of my.
It's almost like listening to a transmission from an alien planet at this point. It's like, what the fuck are y'all talking about?
Yeah,
You are so out of touch with reality, man.
Yeah,
it's insane.
And again,
Shout out to 107.9. Y'all are out of touch.
So that was my whole thing, that I felt that because I listened to this, and this is where I get most of my stuff, like the national syndicated radio. I mean, cool if they're reaching out to the masses, but I feel that it doesn't trickle down to like the little guy, and
Right.
and the small entrepreneurs and people that are trying to get out there. So that was the reason as into why I wanted to create this platform. And probably, if not the biggest reason, I wanted, and I've told Sean this before, with every episode that we put out, I wanted it to be put out with a purpose. Whether it was funny, whether it pissed you off, whether it made you content, I wanted you to take something away from it. So that was, and like I said, I do feel that we're on the right track.
That's a good thesis, man.
We just need to like keep moving forward.
That's what Tim Ferriss does, kind of. He has a lot of different kinds of guests. So sometimes I'll look at his episode and I'll be like, financial banker? Yeah, I kind of don't give a shit about that, and I just won't listen. But then he had one where he interviewed a photographer, and I was like, well, that's what I do, so I would like to listen to this one.
Yeah.
So if you have your guest list diverse, you have more specific targeting.
Fascinating thing about Ferris's podcast is I checked out the episode he did with Arnold Schwarzenegger, thinking like, I'm going to listen to the Gubernator, pontificate about some shit. And he actually went into his stint in the Austrian army. I mean, he grew up behind the Iron Curtain, for his early life. And
I should go check that out. That's sick.
It's fascinating. I mean, first of all, Schwarzenegger is way smarter than people fucking give him credit for.
That's true.
Fascinating human being. I don't know if Freddy had any more questions for you, but I got at least one before we get out of here.
Yeah, go for it, man. I have time. I'm good.
Okay. Well, as we're coming at it from the marketing angle, I know at least trying to convince, just focused on comedy, trying to convince local venue owners that you're talking people who spend $1,000 a night just to keep the lights on in their business, and they don't want to give up, a couple $100 for, one night on something that if they properly marketed it would be, even if it was a, mediocre show, they would at least be able to sell that as an event for their venue.
Right.
Where I'm getting with this is, I imagine dealing with the marketing, which is even a little more ephemeral than having a live performance. That's got to feel like pulling teeth sometimes and trying to convince people that it's something that should be invested in.
Not at all. Actually, once you get really into marketing and you start to understand, this is some really scary shit, right? But like the algorithms that govern your online behaviors are perfectly transparent. I'll give this one away because I think it's hilarious. Whenever I run ads for photosbymichelangelo.com, it's wedding photography, right? Like it's wedding photography. So I need to make sure that people, I want to make sure that people hire me.
No,
people get married every day.
I'm just laughing at the way you just plug that in there.
Gotta drop that in, sprinkle in some marketing. Yeah, I gotta get something out of this episode too, man. No, so I'm running ads. And first of all, I need to make sure that if somebody sees, I'm not just going to say, hey, Facebook, here's $100, show it to everybody in McAllen. That's dumb. A lot of people aren't currently getting married or looking to be married. So first of all, I tell Facebook, hey, Facebook, I need you to run an ad for me, but I want you to only target people that change their status to engaged in the last 3 months. The reason why is, or 6 months. I do 6 months. The reason why is if they've been engaged for more than 6 months, they probably already have a photographer. So I only want people to see my ad if they've been engaged for less than 6 months. So it goes off of that. And then I tell Facebook, I also only want you to show my ad to people that have liked at least one of these pages. Gucci, Prada, Armani, Ferrari, Rolls-Royce. And the reason why is I know these people have expensive taste. They have an eye for quality. So they're more likely to book a high-end wedding photographer because that's how I market my services. It's a higher-end production than, there's people out there that could cover your wedding for $500 with a cheap camera, but that's not my product. So I've established, if you see my ad, you're engaged. recently engaged, you have expensive taste, females, because females tend to make the decision most of the time for photography. And I do the age bracket that I think is the reasonable age to get married. So I do 20 to 40 is, I think 20 to 40, 20 to 45 is what we have in our ad, because older, younger than that, you're probably not getting married anyway. So with all these parameters in place, literally.
At least not in this country.
What was that? Oh yeah. Shout out to Mexico, man. I'll tell you a crazy story right now. But anytime somebody sees my ad, it's almost guaranteed that it's somebody who could use my product or is currently looking for a product like mine.
Okay, but
that's how marketing is.
When I say the trying to sell that ephemeral nature to say a customer,
how do I explain what I do?
Yeah, basically, how do you condense that down into something that you can, go to someone and go, I can do a marketing campaign for you, and it makes sense for you.
Oh, I just did that for. I probably shouldn't name drop them, but we just did it for a very big. I'll say this: it's a very big insurance company. Like they're all over the valley, and we had that.
Are you in good hands?
No, it's not. No. Wait, who's this at?
Allstate.
Okay, no, it's not Allstate.
Okay. That's why I threw it out.
It's not Allstate. Mm-hmm. But it's at that level, right? So they asked me, like, what are you going to do for us that we can't do ourselves? And I gave them the example that I just gave you. Well, you can see what I do with my wedding business, and I can also show you what we've done for other clients. So instead of just giving you this explanation of like, oh, I'm going to help you reach the right people, what does that mean? I show you what I've done in the past. And that should be like, now you understand that I know something you don't. Like, oh, we thought we understood marketing, but you've shown me how much you know. And if I know more than you know, then you're going to hire me. But if that company knew more than I knew, they wouldn't hire me. It's really that easy. Marketing is just trying to justify your knowledge to somebody else. And in some cases, you'll have people be like, I know how to do that too. Yeah, I can do that. I think I could probably do that too. Okay, well then you probably don't want to hire me. And that's where I'm able to fire back with, well, if you know a lot about marketing, you probably don't have a great like video and photo production team. That's what I do have. So that's what I bring to the table. So it is about diversifying your assets. Okay. I know a big part of my marketing in the future is going to be, well, you could hire another advertising agency, but my advertising agency also owns a podcasting network. So I'm going to put your ads in the right places. So that's going to be an upsell in the future. It all ties back together.
Okay. That was kind of leading into a thought I was interested to explore, was the idea of kind of, say, educating your market base to the point where they almost self-select their own needs. Where it's like, yes, these are the things that you can do, and here's the things that you probably don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's happened to me with a lot of clients. I try to sell Luciano's, this restaurant in San Antonio, a very big marketing package. Mm-hmm. But then they were like, well, we already have a marketing team, but we do like your photos. We're going to hire you for the photo content. So I'm going up there tomorrow to shoot the photo content. But it is about showing them everything you can do, and then they'll fire back with what they need. And I think with market transparency, that's how you get ahead of the game. Have you heard of the Harmon Brothers?
No.
They're behind have you seen the Squatty Potty ad?
I have a real quick question, because you hit on something that and you don't have to go into detail. I'm just curious. And I think I'd rather you don't go into detail because of the business side of you. But like the photo thing that you're saying that you're going to San Antonio for that company or whatever tomorrow, right? Yes. Do you get per diem for that, or do you ask for per diem? Are they paying per diem? Okay. No, yeah, of course. So then when you're getting this per diem, and don't go into the figures about it, but
it's $105. Okay.
Well, thank you. But when you go for per diem and everything, I'm sure that it's something that you placed, like you approach and you be like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this job for you. This is what I'm going to do. This is what it's going to entail. But I need you to give me this much per diem. Is that basically
the per diem is just to cover my like gas and food costs. Yeah. So I calculate that pretty fairly. I will embellish a little bit when I feel like it's necessary. For example, I'm not going to charge them for my drive time. I don't want to scare them off with that. But I will exaggerate gas costs a little bit to compensate myself for the drive. But realistically, what I did, and I'll give you the numbers. It's cool. Like, it doesn't matter. I offered them a package for $1,200, a package for $1,800, and a package for $2,200. The $2,200 package is worth closer to $3,000. That's like a very big package. So if they have the budget, they're going to go for the big one right away. If they don't have the budget, that one's immediately off the table, and they're going to look at the small or the medium package. They're going to be between those two. And then usually what I do is I make the medium enticing enough. Just like when you go to Burger King and they're like, you can have this soda. It's like, you can have a soda this big for $1 or one this big for $1.50. And you're like, it's only 50 cents more. I guess I have to do that, you know? So you want to like gently push your client up that ladder. You give them one that's too cold, one that's too hot, one that's just right. In this case, they went with the one that's too cold because they were like, you know what, let's keep it cheap. Let's see how the photos come out, and we'll hire them again in the future if we like them. So they went with the
I guess, and I like the way you gave that breakdown. But I guess what I was getting at, and like I think with any business, man, like what I was trying to figure out was like as far as with your per diem and everything else you just mentioned, like is it difficult for you to make it worth your while, your business, your time, and your money to go to San Antonio?
Well, you got to find what your like personality and your interests lean towards. So for me, I know for a lot of people they'd be like, I'm not driving to San Antonio for $1,200. It's like a lot. It's a long drive. Right? It's a pain in the ass. But for me, like I love traveling. My brother lives in San Marcos, so I don't see it as what a hassle. I have to go to San Antonio. I see it as I can go make my money over there, and now I'm 30 minutes away from my brother who I can go visit and hang out with. So this is kind of a bonus for me. I know I have a couple of bookings in Denver lined up this year, and I'm not making a lot of money on those. I'm making hundreds instead of what I want to make, right? But that covers my flight to Denver, where I have a very close group of friends. I lived in Colorado this past summer. I was living in this like camp up in the mountains with a bunch of people, and I miss those people a lot. So any excuse to go see them makes me very happy. So you better believe I'm going to book cheap jobs over there if it means getting my flight comped to go see my friends. So it is about having all those secondary channels lined up. Maybe you might say like, as a stand-up comedian, you might be like, well, this venue's not paying me a lot, so I don't feel like performing there. But they said they were going to comp my drinks. I'm down to get trashed because I'm an alcoholic. That might be something that you can grab and like latch onto. Or like,
it's very similar to a conversation I've had with people where they're like, what do you want out of this comedy thing? It's like, I want to be a dirty road comic.
Yeah,
I want to travel and meet weird people. That's bottom line.
Yeah, and there's
record it on my way there, basically.
Exactly. There's a comedian, Connor McSpadden, based out of California, that he's always talking about. He's like, oh yeah, I fucking drove like 7 hours for like a $200 gig, and it's like, well, that sucks. But he's obviously really enjoying this. So if your personality is like geared towards enjoying the open road and meeting new people, and every time you meet new people, those are new connections. So like, you know, like I don't know who I'm going to meet tomorrow while shooting that thing in Luciano's, but I know that if anybody else in the future needs photos or they like the Luciano's photos, if my product meets expectations, then in the future I might get recommended to other people over there, and that's how you open up a new market. It's just in general, I try not to say no to work ever. I try to make sure that I'm getting compensated well for my time, but like every job you take now is also an opportunity for more work in the future, and that's how you get consistency as a freelancer, as somebody who's self-employed.
Gotcha. And do you have any other questions?
Is there any aspect of, say, the business market down here in the Valley, specifically here in the Valley? Because I mean, we're from here. I guess there's some love there. We're still here, so is there any aspect of the conversation around business, entrepreneurship, just generally the culture of business down here in the Valley that you would like to see explored or introduced that is not currently being focused on or nurtured?
Yeah, so we didn't have these before, but we're starting to see them now, the business incubators. Mm-hmm. And at these business incubators, it's very important to have like a good mix of businesses that can work well together. So that's something that we just recently started seeing with Grindstone and with the McAllen Creative Incubator. I love that. That's very good. I think we need more of that for the art community. We need more places, communal places where artists can get together and produce content together. And that's something that I'm looking to start up. I'm hoping that by the end of the year I can purchase like a plot of commercial land and set up like a warehouse where we could have of course I'd have my like video production stuff there, but I'd also have like a space where like creative types can get together and like work on products together. And one of the big ones, I was talking to Brian Ventura. He competed in the RGB's Funniest Comedian competition, but he didn't win because someone else did.
We've had Brian on.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was talking to him about, he's a great guy. He's a really good friend of mine. And we were talking about how we wish that there was like something. He wanted to set these up where you have like a group of comedians sit down and workshop their stand-up sets together.
We had somebody else pitch that idea.
So everybody wants to do
Every comic that's ever tried? Yes.
Yeah, it's
which I don't get it. I reached. I'm not gonna name drop them because it hasn't come through yet. But like I don't get it. Like if that's the idea, like why don't you just do it? Or what I mean is like at least try it, and then if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But what I'm saying is because when this particular person pitched this idea to me, and I think it came through you to me, from them to you to me is what I'm saying.
It's kind of an amalgam of various conversations that have been had.
And I'm saying like I was intrigued by it, and I was like, yeah, I'm down. Like let's do it, because I'll be honest, I hadn't thought of it. Like I hadn't, because the way I saw it was like a writer's room, and I hadn't thought of the idea of a writer's room this early in my career, because it's like I just felt that it was early, you know what I mean? Right. But then the way you kind of just placed it and pitched it to me, I was like, yeah, why not? It's not like I didn't see a downside to it, and I did see various upsides to it. So I was like, why the fuck not? Like, why aren't we not doing it?
The biggest upside is, I think, if you have better, like everyone's going to have a good aspect to their comedy. Like everyone's going to have their forte, right? So you might be really good at like observational comedy, situational comedy. You might just be good about your stage presence. You might just have a really funny voice, and now everything you say becomes funny. Like, is it Chris Tucker, I think? The guy that it's like, Jackie Chan, you crazy. It's Chris Tucker, right? Yeah, it's like everyone has their shtick. And I think getting to work with a diverse group of people, you'll get to explore different ways to work your set.
Yeah.
I know, like, I've written a couple of stand-up sets, and I've never performed stand-up because I look at them and I'm like, I just don't know if it's good or not, and I don't feel like going out and potentially bombing. But I know
you're never gonna like if you need to know this now.
Oh yeah, no,
like if you ever write anything, you're never gonna find out if it's funny or not unless you try. Because the biggest critical point is never judge your material by you judging. You can't like look at it and be like, oh, that's funny. Oh no, that's not funny. The only really true judge that will tell you if it's funny or not is somebody else. And by that somebody else, I'm not talking about your friend, your mom, your dad. I'm talking about some fucking random guy that didn't even know in the audience that you fucking existed. That's the person that's going to tell you, hey, that's funny. Well, and I'm not saying that they're going to tell you it's funny. It's just like either you're going to make them laugh or you're not.
But I think a good comparison is you take like modern car manufacturers where they're using, a very advanced computer modeling to go, well, we shape it like this and it'll, crumple this way, and the safety measures. And they still build these $1,000 vehicles and literally smash them into walls, because you will not know until you smash it into a fucking wall.
I know, it's a very good comparison. But I think at the end of the day, like, and I hear that advice from like every comedian. That's like the most standard advice. It's like, go bomb. Yes, go bomb. Yeah. But I'm not sure. I think I might bomb. Yeah, that's the fucking point. Go bomb. Yeah. I think newer comedians
there's
want
nothing
to.
Wrong. There's nothing wrong with bombing. Now, just once you become a seasoned comic, don't make it a habit of fucking bombing, because there's people paying to come see you. I get that.
Well, and that's
exactly what open mics are for.
That's what I was going to get at, right? Is like younger comedians want advice on their sets, so they know, like, hey, before I go perform this at my open mic, can I just run it by you? And seasoned comics could help them out with that. At the same time, with a like writers' room collaboration, seasoned comics could be like, hey, I'm taping my special. Can you guys help me polish it up to make sure that it's as good as possible? And you make sure that you get the strongest version of yourself for your like Netflix or Amazon Video special or whatever. So it really does funnel both ways. I think amateurs want to make sure that they're opening with their best foot, and professionals want to make sure that they're leading the pack also with their best foot. And there's never any reason to not have that creative collaboration. As a photographer, you might think that it's weird for me to sit down with other wedding photographers and compare products and how we do things. I do that all the time. I hang out with Ben Briones. I hang out with Roman from Six Thumb Pictures. I'm friends with a lot of photographers. Marco Antonio, he's one of my direct competitors. We're all friends. We all know each other. We're all super chill with each other. It's just like, if we're not comparing our products and if we're not workshopping, and then how do you grow as an artist, as a comedian, as a photographer, as anything?
It's, what is it? Rising tide lifts all boats.
I say that all the time. That's one of my favorite quotes. You know what they say about tides? I'll say that to my buddy Joe, and because I was telling him that he should teach a drone piloting course, and he's like, "Isn't that going to create more drone pilots? Isn't that going to be bad for me as a drone pilot?" I was like, "No, because now you've established yourself as the king of drone pilots because you're an educator."
Yeah. Well, one thing I've been telling multiple people that have come on here in just random conversations is like I've been encouraging people to try podcasts, to start a podcast, and it's like even if they become, highly or let's say more quickly successful than any project I ever put out there, what it does is introduces that concept to the local market where it's like, yes, listen to podcasts. There are local podcasts. You have a variety.
And now that people are done with that one, they might be like, well, what else is there in the Valley? And,
right. And for any avenue of creative work or, just business in general, I believe it's Tim Ferriss you brought up earlier, fail faster. Get out there, give it a go. And either you figure out very quickly that you have a knack for it or that you should be looking at other avenues.
Yeah, exactly. No, we're on the same page.
Definitely. So you've done it about 10 times now.
Done.
But formally, this is the part of the episode where we encourage every guest to market themselves and throw their social media out there. And where they can find you or whatnot.
I think to make it easier for everyone, if you just go on photosbymichelangelo.com, at the bottom you can find all of my social media links. That's probably the best way to do it. I also recommend everyone go to bavizadigital.com if you need any advertising, any like digital marketing help. It's honestly a passion at this point. We love shooting commercials. We love helping businesses succeed. We love the handful of clients that we have, how we've like turned their businesses around and helped them find success when they didn't think it was possible. It's really just emotionally fulfilling for us. I don't want to plug out my ventures, so I'm just going to cap it at that because I don't want to be like, and download this and do that and go over here and do this. Yeah, but
gotcha.
The big ones are Photos by Michelangelo and Baviza Digital. Those are my main projects right now.
Awesome. Anything else?
And find me on Pornhub. I'm gonna be posting some stuff there soon.
You too?
Yeah. Awesome.
Do you guys
and
have,
I get to watch.
No, we have not migrated to Pornhub yet.
No, I was gonna ask if you guys have ever thought about porn names. Have you guys ever given yourself? I know it's like a conversation a lot of people have.
I think I did.
What's your porn star name? Let's hear it. I'm putting you on the spot real bad, man.
No, I don't mind. I'm scrambling my brain to remember what it was because it had something to play out with my condition, and I can't remember the exact ones.
That is good. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll tell you my favorite porn star's name, and I'm not like a fan of this porn star, but I think the name is hilarious. It was oh no, I forgot it. Oh, it was Jack Sparrow. It was like a Jack Sparrow impersonator, but he's called Jack Swallows. I think that's fucking funny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I love those like comedy, like.
Yeah.
What's that Ron Jeremy line from Detroit Rock City? If you like birds, this is just a swallow.
That's really good. Hell yeah.
If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can find me at hatfieldstandup@gmail.com, as well as Hatfield Standup on Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to listen to my solo podcast, Mad Laughter on just look for me.
There you go.
A Shout Engine, bro. Wait, is it Shout Engine?
Yeah. Oh, wait. Give your links first.
You can find me across the board on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Freddy G.
If you'd like to listen to the audio version of this podcast, you can find us at shoutengine.com/bouncing brains. You can find us on Facebook under Bouncing Brains Podcast. We got a group on there if you'd like to discuss anything, if you have any questions for Mike here. by all means, we can always follow up with that. We're on YouTube as well under Bouncing Brains. Like, share, and subscribe. Pimp it to your friends.
And until next time, y'all have a good rest of your Monday. Fuck again. I almost forgot the day. Monday, yeah. It's President's Day. We're celebrating 44 out of 45 presidents. So, happy President's Day.
There you go. Yeah, fuck John Adams.
Yeah.
I thought Garfield deserved the bullet. Night, y'all.
Right, good one.